Sounds good.
You may not all realize that there's a core curriculum YouTube page that we can put this on. I know.
Oh, cool.
Next level, Kate. Not even, yeah,
No.
wow.
My screen just share? Okay,
Yes.
and it's working. So I'm not seeing Dan on here. I don't know if anyone heard from him, because our plan was for him to actually start by going over the requirements.
He has another minute and a half.
Okay, sounds
Right? If he's like me, you just float in at the last minute.
What was that little thing on Chaucer that just flashed?
I'll follow up with you all afterwards. I saw we have our first proposal that has gotten to our step in the process. So I'll send out an email to.
That's great. You know, Matt, Chaucer died on this day in 1400. So I think that's kind of an appropriate.
Okay, I did not know
Discussion.
that. So
Richard, I love you.
And you, Joni, giving new meaning and emphasis to 501, your course 501. You know what I was referring to? The famous number 501?
Oh gosh, what?
Jeans. The first Levi Strauss jeans were the button flies. They're called 501s. It's the first time I've ever seen the number since I was in high school.
I am going to have to like put a picture of jeans on my Brightspace 501 page.
Yeah.
There you go.
Get that picture with the two people pulling the mules in different directions.
Okay.
That's on the
I'll look
on
for
the
it.
label of the, okay.
Awesome. All right, folks, I'll welcome you, but I want to let you know that we've started recording. So just if you don't have it, I just want you to know that, right? You want to mute yourselves now is the time. So thanks for coming to this workshop on writing across the curriculum, WAC. Glad you can make it and glad we can answer some questions. So I will turn it over to Matt and to Dan, who are running the show today.
I guess I'll just introduce myself. I'm the current chair of the WAC committee, Matt Brubaker, for those of you that don't know me. I'm also a part of the psychology department here on campus. And we've got not necessarily all, but we've got several other members from the current WAC committee joining us today. And I don't know, maybe it'd be useful to just go around and introduce yourself, just quick name and maybe department you're affiliated with. So I don't know, let's go,
Sure.
I'll go based on my screen. Maybe Richard, if you want to introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm the last living male descendant of Geoffrey Chaucer, and I wear 501 jeans. I'm joking. I teach writing and literature at ROCE. ROCE. That's me.
And then let me see, I've got Anne next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Ann Wheeler. I teach in the Department of Literature, Writing, and Journalism. I direct the college writing program, and I'm the kind of teacher that when I filled out my WAC proposal, I was able to say that 100% of the assessment came from writing. So I'm pretty deep in that world.
All right, thanks, Anne. And then
Way to
next,
go, Ann.
I'm seeing Joni.
So I teach in the occupational therapy department, and with Dan and Richard have been on the WAC committee for more years than any one of us want to mention. But we always have a good time, and we are so happy to have other professors here with us interested in either improving or introducing a WAC class. So welcome and thanks for joining us.
And then last but not least, I'll pass it off to Dan. You can introduce yourself, and then maybe just if you want to continue on, I know you were going to go over, just start by going over some of the guidelines. And while you're introducing yourself, I'll go ahead and share my screen and pull up a copy of those guidelines while you talk about
Sure,
those.
sure. Hi, everybody. It's great to see you. I'm Dan Fraser. As Joni has said, we've been around a long time here. and you know, WAC has been around a long time. This committee and this requirement and the interest in writing goes way back, very early, back into the early 90s. So, you know, I think we've done a good job of kind of keeping it going and maintaining continued interest in it. I'm glad to see some people I haven't seen for a while. Joseph, good to see you. Ariel and Debbie, good to see you all. There's some people, and Kate. I haven't seen some folks. I mean, there's some folks I don't know. So before I jump into that, I'd love to, you know, for you all to introduce yourselves as well, perhaps, if that's possible, and maybe, you know, just say a little bit about what you would like to get out of this workshop, perhaps.
I'll jump in. I'm Judith Herzberg. I teach in the graduate and undergraduate program in human services. Areas that I teach in are ethical leadership, cross-cultural leadership, and things like community organizing. What I hope to get out of this is I keep stressing to my students over the past 25 years that writing in the social services is essential because you have to be able to communicate clearly when you're dealing with clients and with communities and with inside of a legislative type of body. So that's what I'm hoping to get out of. How do I get my students to a point where they really are cognizant of what they're writing and making it meaningful for them?
Thanks, Judith. It's good to meet you.
Hi, my name is Saul Valdivieso. I'm part of the business department here at Springfield. Mostly to get out from this is going to be how to write a proposal for a class that we want to introduce. And so it's business communication. And so glad to be here.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Saul. Glad you're here.
Likewise.
Let's see, Alejandro? Wait, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I think you're mute.
Yeah, it's a classic, right? Yeah, there always has to be someone who and this time it was me. Yeah, so I'm Alejandro. I'm new faculty in physics in the mathematics, physics, and computer science department. And I came to this meeting because I'm trying to introduce a class in astronomy, which will be a gen ed class. And I like to do it as a WAC class because I want students to write papers and do some research and maybe some creative writing or critical analysis of science fiction writing, like as a fun assignments as part of the astronomy course. So yeah, I'd like to see how to incorporate this into my proposal.
Okay, glad you're here. Welcome. And I don't know if others want to go around and introduce themselves as well and kind of say who you are, even though I know who you are.
Sure, I can introduce myself briefly. So Ariel Rodriguez, and the Recreation Management program, and I do have a WAC class in the 103, and it's one class that I'm looking to renew. So that's one of the things I'm looking to get out of this is just to get any more insight other than just what was identified to help me ensure that this passes through a WAC. And kind of Judith mentioned just the importance of it. I teach a separate class that looks at professional development for our students, and we oftentimes review job descriptions for our different fields, and it's not uncommon for them to identify explicitly in their job description their capacity to write oral and written communication. So it's important for our fields as well.
Thanks, Ariel. I should add that I also teach a course called Writing in the Professions, so I'm very sensitive to the need, as you point out, of students to be able to write, in professional situations. Let's see. How about Debbie?
Hi,
Hey.
how are you? I'm Debbie Burnett, and I teach a WAC class. I teach a senior practicum as a WAC class in fall and spring. And I'm also wearing my department chair hat. So I'm a new department chair. So I also want to make sure I'm informed. So
Congratulations.
yeah, condolences, right?
One or the other, yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of wearing both hats, but I'll be submitting my WAC in this coming week.
Okay. All right. So I think did I miss anybody?
Joseph. You missed
Oh, Joseph. I'm sorry. Joseph.
Hello. Yes, I'm Joseph Brockway. I teach Spanish here, and I am trying to find ways to integrate Spanish coursework into the students' studies. And I wanted to propose a course for themed exploration, and I wanted to, incorporate the writing across the curriculum objectives and see if that can sort of be a way to incentivize students to take some Spanish classes.
All right.
And and I'm referring to my culture class, Spanish culture class that is taught in English and not in Spanish.
Right, which we have talked about. Yeah, yeah. So, I'm going to go to the WAC requirements in just a second, but just let me mention one other thing, which is many of the folks here have been involved in a program that I supervise in the spring called Writing Fellows. And already I can hear some echoes of the kinds of conversations that take place in that program. So Judith and Saul and Alejandro, I hope that maybe I can give you some more information about that if you might be interested in participating in that. Ariel and Debbie and Joseph have all participated in this program in the past. So, they can tell you more about it as well. But it's a program that's meant to support you as you create writing assignments and evaluation rubrics for your students. And of course, that's, some of what we're going to be talking about today, I guess, as, WAC requirements. So, having said that, I guess the next thing, what I'm meant to do here next is to kind of go through some of the checklist items. And I think our purpose today is mostly to invite you to ask questions about any of these outcomes or requirements that you might have questions about. So I'll just kind of read through this briefly. The purpose of WAC is the ability to write effectively in a broad range of professional civic situations, critical to preparation for leadership and service to humanity. A WAC course integrates both writing to learn and writing production tasks in order to meet specific course requirements. So writing, what that means is the writing that you assign can be either writing that students do to help them learn your course content, or writing that they do as evidence that they have met your expectations for the course content. We also have recently had this discussion, and we want to encourage this as well, which is that we hope that your chairs will work to limit the enrollment in WAC courses. We know that's not always possible. This is an ongoing struggle that we've had over the years, but we do feel like chairs can play a role in helping to keep the enrollment in your WAC courses down. So because we do recognize that assigning writing is time consuming. So that's I think going to happen kind of on a department by department basis, but that's a conversation that we're welcome to have and with you and support you. Thank you. Thanks, Anne. Yes, they should be capped at 18, but we've gotten away from that. So the checklist. So we'll start with that, I guess. First is the syllabus. And I'm not going to read everything here because I think, you can do that yourselves. And Matt, you want to scroll down a little bit?
Yeah.
One of
Do you
the
want me to
things
go
there.
all the way down or just up here? Because I've got the kind of the checklist down here too.
Yeah, well, let's go back up to the top a little and just if there are questions about anything on this, what to submit list or our expectations about outcomes from a WAC course. Ariel.
So just a comment and a question. So could you please elaborate on percentage of course grade determined by each writing assignment? I'm confused with the next. I thought that was covered under the at least 30% of the course grade is determined by written assignments. I'm not sure how those are different.
I think the intent here is to say, so for example, please feel free to add to my explanation, WAC committee members. But I think the intent here is that you're gonna, if you have one assignment that's perhaps 15% and another that's 10% and another that's 5%, that you would identify that in your syllabus and that would add up to 30%.
So having something like a line that says 40 writing assignments 40%, 20% each of 2 or something like that would be enough. Like
I'm sorry, say that again.
So, something that says, for example, writing assignments 40% in a grade breakdown, and then specified like 20% each of 2 assignments or something like that. Like that, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that make sense, Ariel?
Yes, that makes sense. I guess it's a clarification of the last point.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3?
No, number 1, 2, 1, 2, 3,
4.
The 6th bullet point.
What it does, Ariel, in terms of asking for those as separate data points, with percentage of course grade determined by each writing assignment, we want students to be able to understand the weight that their individual endeavors hold with relation to the rest of their course, right? So if they get an end of term paper that's 80% of their grade, they should be able to see that as they look at the syllabus, because they're not going to quantify the amount of their course that is determined by writing assignments as a committee, so we can look at it. We just want to make sure that people know that at least 30% of the course grade is determined by writing assignments and evaluation of writing assignments. So I think to differentiate those, one is more student oriented to make sure that they understand the purpose and intention of the class, and the other is more a quota is such a bad word, but it gives us a quick way to make sure that all courses are doing the necessary amount of writing.
Okay.
I have a question about the evaluation criteria or rubric, like how detailed this is supposed to be. Like, I generally use a kind of simple rubric when I ask students to write a paper, for example, a research paper. That says just 50% from content, like accuracy, thoroughness, keeping to word limits, and so on. 30% for writing, like structure, organization, and clarity, and so on. 20% for sourcing, citation practices, and so on. And is this enough, or does it have to be much more detailed and exactly how you break down each category and yeah?
I think I can answer that, which is, I think it's going to depend. It's going to vary a lot from one individual to next, one individual faculty member and class to the next. It depends on what I like to say in the fellows program is it kind of depends on the complexity of the assignment. So if you have a very complex writing assignment, you're probably going to have a more complex rubric. If you have a simple writing assignment, you don't need a complex rubric.
Right.
So it's really kind of just common sense to some extent, but we do want and encourage people to use a rubric or at least to make their evaluation criteria clear, because there is a history of writing being assigned and students get a grade and they don't know how they got the grade. So we want you to try to,
be more specific about exactly how the grade comes from. Yeah. So you say something about the Writing Fellows program, that there is like examples of assignments and rubrics and I guess help in this. Can you be more specific about this? Like, how do I access this information, or who do I contact, or
me.
You. Okay. So I write your name there in my notes, and okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add off of something that Dan mentioned that goes back to, I think, some of those questions from Ariel and Alejandro as well, that I think these criteria that we have here are designed so that you still have flexibility in how you are setting up your classes. So there's not necessarily one thing, and hopefully I speak for everyone in the committee when I say there's not necessarily one thing that we're going to be looking for. So I don't really see our role as, trying to block potential WAC courses from getting through. I think it's more just making sure that you're thinking through these things in some way, whatever way, seems to fit best for your individual course.
And if it's helpful, go on, Joni.
I was just going to say, what you wrote is very similar to the WAC class, the 501 one that I have, where 30% is writing, and then I just delineate a number of writing facets I'm looking for within it. And then when I comment on it, I'll comment on which ones they've done well and which ones they haven't. I don't assign 2% for this facet, 3% for that. So it's similar to what you said. I think that's fine.
Okay.
If it's not, my course can't go either.
Okay.
And I would just say, Dan's completely right that students should always know where their grade is coming from, especially with regards to writing, because that can feel very subjective in terms of evaluation. And I'd also say as why we want to see it at the proposal stage is, for example, there's a faculty member on campus, love the forthrightness, is like, I grade my work is submitted in writing, but I don't care about the quality of writing. I care that their content is correct. And that's that person's philosophy, but that would not be a WAC course if the writing itself was not being valued. So I think at the proposal stage, besides sort of modeling best practices, that's what we're looking to check for.
So how do we ensure, for example, Anne, like you're saying somebody's doesn't really care about, the writing that much, but so doesn't mean that they have to, the grammar matters, or in the rubric, do we have to say like the number of errors in your writing, or how do we ensure that that is evaluated correctly? Or that is fulfilled in when we fill out the application.
Right. Yeah, I think that all of us are quiet for a second, and Dan, I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Is within writing pedagogy, and therefore within writing across the curriculum philosophy, the emphasis is really on working with the student as a writer, and working on in teaching them the writing process is more important than the individual product. And so it's not built in. Obviously, people own their independent courses, and deciding how they want to evaluate it is a move of academic freedom. And I know you're in the business department, is that right, Saul? And I know that correctness really matters for the circulation of documents within the business world. But from the WAC perspective, we're more interested in that process and less interested in quantifying the number of mistakes. But if your students are getting that rhetorical understanding, that understanding of why this correctness matters, not just because you like to be authoritarian, but because it will not present well in the world, and they're getting tools to, fix it, then they have that understanding of why that criteria is valued by you.
Yeah, I completely agree with Ann. Thank you. And I think that helps articulate the situational nature of writing, right? So we have different reasons for wanting students to write in our classes. And I think one of the things I'm hearing today is, much of it has to do with professional preparation. And so, error in writing does matter. And to ignore that when you say that, you're doing this writing because you want people to be better prepared to write in professions, would not be something that you would want to do in your evaluation tools, right? So you'd want to have some evaluation based on their control of error, perhaps. Or what do you think?
Well, the thing about it, like I mean, I have in my one of the classes that I teach is the intro to business, and part of my rubrics is usually like, okay, so grammar is correct, and they're putting effort into it, and so that to me that matters. Or I tell them, if you show me that you went to the writing center, that that really provides another level that you went in towards that effort. But I'm not sure, like, if we're going to submit something in terms of like the rubrics, what do they like? How do you quantify, or how do you say where the effort or the what do the students have to do to, like, in that rubric, to make sure that they're writing, or it'll be sufficient to qualify within a WAC class? That's why I'm wondering.
Yeah. I think we might be talking about two different areas. One would be like the process you're expecting students to go through when they write. So, sending them to the writing center, for example, saying you need to go to the writing center. So that would be a part of the process that you would want them to go through before they turn the paper in to you. For you to read or comment or evaluate, right? But then there's also the process that you have to go through when you evaluate the writing. When the students are done with the writing, and you're looking at it and you're seeing errors, under those circumstances, then that's part of your responsibility to think about how error would figure into the grade that you give that student. For example, you could just say, what percentage of the of the grade that I'm going to give this student's paper should be determined by the quantity of errors that they make. Right? We're not looking to be so prescriptive, especially with error, that we are telling people, you have to make sure these papers don't have any errors in them. We're not doing that. We're more interested in, and I know this is something that I do in writing fellows as well, is help you to articulate your own goals and expectations for student writing, and to make sure that those expectations are articulated both in your assignments and your evaluation tools. That's a process that we all have to go through, I think. And it invites us to think about what's important when we look at student writing. I'm not sure that answers your question, though.
Well, it's somewhat answers the question. I'm just trying to visualize what do I need to do to fulfill this class that I'm trying to, one or two classes that I'm going to be submitting to your committee. And so I just want to make sure that I have the right components, and I want to make sure that I have all the criteria filled for that. So I'm just trying to see it visually, more or less.
Yeah, we don't typically look really closely at rubrics, evaluation rubrics, when when we look at courses. I mean, in our bullet point here, we just want to make sure that you're using them, right? But of course, we want to also offer you the opportunity to continue the conversation about what they may or what they could be, I guess, in order to accomplish your goals in the course.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
So I have another question. It says, if the details of the writing assignments are not clear in the syllabus, please also include a copy of a major writing assignment. So how much detail should the syllabus have to avoid including an extra writing assignment? So typically I have like one paragraph description, so a brief description of each assignment in the syllabus, basically saying what the topic is and that it will have a drafting opportunity some weeks before the deadline, and that it will have like a such and such word length requirement and such like a minimum number of citations requirement. So very bare bones, like whereas in a like specific sheet with the writing assignment, I will have like examples of the topics you can cover and much more detailed explanation of expectations and rubrics and so on. So how much level of detail is it wanted to include in the syllabus, and when do you want to also include like the extra? Yeah.
I think I'll let somebody else answer that question. That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know what others would think on that. I guess my philosophy on that is if you're in doubt, if you have that extra specificity in kind of an extra written out prompt, then you might as well just include that. I see this more as an issue like if you're designing a class maybe from scratch that you haven't taught before, and so maybe you don't have all of the details completely worked out, and that's why we try to include on there that even if you have a draft form of the assignment, I think whatever details you have, you know, the more you can give, the more information, probably the better from my perspective.
Right.
And I think, Alejandro, I was the one that kind of pushed us to put that on there, so I'm sorry. When I review syllabi for the college writing program, I will often see syllabi that say essay number 1, this point, essay number 2, this point, and that doesn't tell us anything about those essays or what they value. So I would imagine, I don't want to say you're approved without seeing it, but I would imagine that if you had a paragraph describing what the writing assignment would entail and what it would look like, then taking at face value that you may not have time to write the full beautiful assignment sequence at this moment, I think as long as we had that picture, it would work well. I think if you just wrote the essay or the research essay, then we would reach out for clarification.
Yeah, it's definitely not that. I have like a paragraph that I think pretty much explains what the assignment is, but in a brief way, right? Without giving like examples of possible topics or like more detailed, like a breakdown of deadlines and expectations for each deadline or stuff like that. Yeah.
And I totally
love the idea of having them in the class.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with Ann that, you know, probably a paragraph is going to be fine. And if it's not, this is a work in progress. We'll just come back and say we need a little more information. I mean, it's not an end all at all. We want to increase the number of WAC classes.
And am I understanding this correctly here? This is for the approval process of the WAC requirements, right? So like I would still include all of the details in the project or the writing assignment when I present it to the students. But for now, to approve the course, you need just those basic elements.
Of course, yeah.
So I have a question.
So Judith, I just wanted to say Judith Herzberg posed a really good question in the chat. I don't know if anybody else saw it. She asks, when errors interfere with comprehension, shouldn't that be considered differently than simple typos in the student paper? And the comp folks in the room will try not to go into too deep of an ideological rumination on that. For me, Dan, go on. You probably have a less personalized answer. Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, for me, and I teach at the first year level mostly. I do teach the writing for the professions course and other upper level classes. it's more ultimately, it's more productive in the long run to teach students to identify their patterns of error than it is to try and knock out every single error that interferes with comprehension. So, you know, teaching them strategies like reading their own work aloud to catch that, or writing on their paper, this sentence does not make sense because, and explaining to them why it doesn't make sense, because if they knew why it didn't make sense, it would make sense. There's lots of scholarship on there about how you shouldn't just write awkward in a red pen. So because most of the, I'm getting away from myself, most of the writing within a WAC class is done in multiple drafts with multiple readers, either yourself or the peer review process, they will get a lot of feedback on what's not making sense, or if they've never met a comma in their life, they're going to get that feedback. And what I would look for is, have they taken that feedback into consideration in their final draft? So if they were told, you know, if you told them 6 sentences were awkward and here's why, and here's what you can do to fix them, and they didn't fix them, that's a major source of quote unquote downgrading for me. Whereas if they really took my advice and added a whole new section that rearranged something, and gosh, there was a new sentence in there that didn't make sense, then I would probably not feel the same need to quote unquote grade down for it.
We're not your wrong school of learning. And it can be very discouraging for students if they get the impression that all you're doing when you're looking at their work is looking for things that are wrong with it, and that these need to be corrected. It's really important, Saul, as you said, in business, that correctness is very important. But we want to maybe balance the noting the errors they make by discovering, as Anne just suggested, patterns. So for example, if you have a student who makes run-on sentences, for example, if you can teach that student somehow to identify for himself or herself what a run-on sentence is and correct it for themselves, if you can eliminate just that one error, you're not just eliminating one error, you're eliminating maybe 5 times in one paper where it occurs. So it's really a combination of encouraging and supporting the students, persuading them, exciting them to want to improve their writing skills, and the correction of grammatical errors is a part of that process, but it should not be the main focus or the only focus. 41% of the jobs that students with college degrees to get, 41%, writing is the second most important skill on 41% of those jobs that degrees give access to. So what you're saying is very important, but we're looking for kind of more holistic ways of encouraging students than just pointing out that they're not doing what we think is wrong. Does that help?
And then, Saul, did you have a question? I didn't mean to cut you off before.
Oh, no worries. I was just following along. So we have, for example, a variety of instructors that teach, for example, intro to business. You know, like we talk about teaching freedoms and whatnot, but like how much of this do those professors or those adjuncts have to follow? What, you know, because I'm doing the main syllabus, but how much do they have to follow what we write in that specific syllabus, which is going to be WAC?
Good question. I think that, Saul, it sounds like in some ways you're kind of, I'll answer it this way. You're kind of taking a leadership position on this course by creating the standard course, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. So I'm actually probably gonna do 2 or 3 courses for business, that intro to business, the business communication, and maybe one more, which is ethics, that also involves a lot of writing. And so we do have a couple, like especially the intro to business, we employ a variety of people that teach that course because there's a lot of sections. And so I just want to more or less going forward, what will be the standard, or what would be the expectations from everybody that teaches that class?
So this is really similar. Oh, I was just going to say that this
I was
is
just
similar.
going to turn it over to you, Ann, because of what you went through. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I went through with recertifying the college writing courses last spring. We have English 113, we have English 114, and they're taught. I have 21 different people teaching those courses this semester. And so I just submitted pretty close to my version of the course. It happened to be courses that I share out as the boiler, as like a model for new faculty and new adjuncts, but they were just a version of the course. And then as program director, right, and with my composition committee, we've identified common curricular elements that need to be achieved within all courses. And so I review, the semester is a little funky, but I review all of the syllabi to make sure that the common curricular elements are being met. So for your department, you wouldn't necessarily need to tell a faculty member, get that 30% of the course grade done exactly this way. But what you would want to make sure of is that they're using your course as a model so they understand what needs to happen, and that they're keeping the WAC principles and practices at the foreground of the course. So if I see a course that's called a WAC course and the instructor isn't providing their students with opportunities to revise and resubmit, and the instructor's not doing peer review or instructor-student meetings, that's a huge red flag for me. And that is something that gets lost between course proposals and faculty teaching it and revisions. And so I think it really just needs somebody saying, here is your academic freedom, here is what you have to achieve within your interpretation of this course. And if it's not there, then that course becomes a diluted WAC experience, which has relatively negative effects, I would say, across the core curriculum. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Short answer, yeah. Short answer, I just submitted my syllabus.
No, thank you. That is a great way of looking at it, and that makes a lot of sense.
You know what, Saul? It sounds like you're in a position where you are creating the standard. You're doing it for 4 courses in your department. You're in a wonderful position to set the standard for the department. And if you do it right, you will improve the students' writing skill levels for all their courses.
And I just want to add, though Anne had said to revise and resubmit, it's really recursive. And I know we all agree with this. I don't have students revising and resubmitting unless they're really struggling. I have steps along the way. So it's recursive, it's whatever style you want to do to help them develop their writing skill. Just so that it doesn't, being a content teacher, I don't want to have them going over the same thing over and over again. So I just move on to the next project, and it's a little bit more challenging. So it's recursive, but it's in a different manner.
I think, one of the things one of the standards we all believe is that good writing doesn't happen, immediately or magically. That it does take time, and it's going to take some students more time than others. And I think what Joni's describing is just this, we want to give those students the opportunity to go through a writing process that leads to success for them. That may be a different process for different students, and it may be a different process for different assignments. It can vary, but it should be a process. It shouldn't just always be a, okay, turn the paper in, here's your grade, you're done with it.
That makes a lot more sense, and it's a lot more clear to me now. Thank you.
Think of yourself as kind of a coach, Saul, rather than a teacher.
Trying to be, trying to be. Thank you.
Matt, do we want to? I mean, I'm not sure if we've exhausted the checklist and the outcomes. Are there?
Yeah, I think
are we
that's
ready
everything
to
on this
make-
page. The only thing that we had left was, and I don't know if we want to go over this specifically or just if people had questions, but I know all of this, it might look a little bit different form, but this is all also located on the Curriculog form. And that was one thing I want to make sure we have at least a few minutes here at the end. I can pull up the Curriculog page and just walk through just a couple points on that, especially for those of you who obviously have not submitted it yet. But essentially what we have here, and then as I said, also on the Curriculog page, are each of the 5 learning outcomes for WAC. And then we gave a little bit more descriptor here right beside that on essentially what we're looking for in order to see that that outcome has been met. So this is essentially what you're going to be writing about, and it doesn't have to be much more than maybe a few sentences or a short paragraph where you give just a brief explanation on each of these outcomes and how your course meets those outcomes. So I didn't know if anyone had any specific questions on any maybe individual outcome of these 5 and how to show evidence for that, or.
So I do have a question, if you can go back up to number 1, and it was in reference to types of writing, where it says examples include journals, essays, reports, etc. So when we're talking about journals, is a journal here more of a low stakes writing where they are writing for ideas and not necessarily for like what's covered in number 2 with the researching, drafting, revising? Or can you clarify perhaps what a journal is if that is not the case?
Should I answer that? Okay.
Sure.
Joseph, I would say I think that is for you to decide. I think you're right to suggest that journals typically are low stakes writing assignments, or perhaps another way to think of them is as a part of a larger writing assignment, right? So that students are writing in their journals. Why? So that they can use the journal content to write a more formal essay later. You know, so there's formality to consider, but also purpose, and you know, how this accomplishes your course goals.
And so and excellent, that makes perfect sense. So in that case, would a journal contribute to that 30% if it is perhaps taken in that light? Could it be then thought of as like drafting? Because almost kind of like a brainstorming part of the writing process, if that's how the journal could be used.
Yeah, I would say so. Yes, I would think you know, it'd be important also to articulate your expectations for the journal, and we would be assuming that you're going to evaluate the journal as well.
Right, if it's incorporated into that 30%. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And I just put in the chat, if it's helpful, just a couple of WAC resources that those of us WAC people just carry around in our back pockets. Journals typically fall under the idea of writing to learn, which is where you are writing with the primary audience being yourself, and you're using writing as a methodology for better understanding concepts and better ingraining them into your brain. And so typically that falls under a lower stakes assignment and is typically the 3 kind of stages of writing according to WAC are writing to learn, right? Writing to understand the concept, writing to engage, and then specifically writing in the disciplines. So it's a helpful way of thinking about it and a helpful way of thinking about how you might value it.
I think Kate has also put something in the chat about access to curriculugs. So Kate, I think you wanted to make sure everybody could access that.
Right. So if you cannot, and I see one person cannot, I will send an email to Mara, who is our curriculum administrator, and CC you on it so that you can get in the system. She's very prompt. So let me know. I'll put my email address in here, and I'll handle that.
Mara actually has to.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. I've forgotten my password multiple times, and she's been very quick with resetting it for me. So.
Maura has to open it up for us. You know, we can access the site, but she is the one that has to open it for us.
Right. She will give, like, Saul, I'm assuming you've never done anything in Curriculog, so that's why you don't have an account set up in there. So she'll just give your Springfield College email access to it. I'm sure the same is true for you, Alejandro. So just let me know if you need that, and I'll happy to facilitate that.
And she is fast.
And I just want to say there's one quirk about Curriculog that you have to submit your proposal and then you have to launch it. If you don't launch it, it will sit there and you will think you're done, but no one can see it except you. So there is a two-part process. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer that. But just know that it's this weird system.
Yes, mine sat there for a week and a half till Matt let me know you have to launch it.
Ariel, you also had a question. Did you want to jump in there?
Sure, I just wrote it down, but basically there are two questions. One that had to do with both of them are around learning outcome number 2. If you can talk more about expectations regarding instructor and peer evaluations. And the second part of the question is, I know there's intentionality when you put the word researching because you didn't have it in the last sort of version. So can you talk a little bit about that word in learning outcome number 2?
Students will demonstrate ability to use recursive strategies of researching, drafting, revising, editing during the composing process. This one?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, my thinking on that, and I'll let others chime in, is that is in a nutshell the steps of the writing process, right? That need to happen over and over again. So the expectations for instructor and peer evaluation, some of this is going to range from person to person. Peer evaluation, it's really hard to do. Students are not good at it. I believe in it. I do it in all my classes. It's tough to get right. So my expectation for peer evaluation, and I don't know if this is too granular for you, is that they make a genuine effort to describe their partner's draft, to replicate their experience as a reader, and to provide them with observations and concrete compliments and suggestions, right? So, and that's a way of saying my expectation is really not to blow off your peer. That my expectation is for them to do maybe some of the more detailed writing that they do over the course of the semester. And then my expectation, you know, for what I expect them to do is to, if I give them feedback, I expect them to integrate it or to tell me why they're not integrating it. So my expectation is not, I took X amount of time responding to your draft and or meeting with you, and what you handed in to me was the same as your first draft. That's, you know, they don't have to do it perfectly, but if I don't see that sort of effort to consider what I've said, then they have not met my expectations. And I have a box in all of my rubrics for engaging in that process: peer review, drafting, revising, reflecting.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
I mean, I would just add something a little bit more about peer review. I don't know if that was part of your question, Ariel, but I mean, I don't think peer review takes the place of your own instructor review, right? They need both. You know, one of the functions of peer review that we also know about is that it gives students practice not only responding to someone else's writing, but it can train them to help know how to pay attention to their own writing. So, you know, it's whether they give the best response in a peer review or not, it sometimes matters less than whether they have become a part of this conversation about the writing that's going on, the writing that's being produced by someone. Because they're gonna, you know, our assumption is they're gonna carry that methodology, that way of thinking about writing over to their own writing.
And I take a very different approach because it does say peer or instructor here. I don't do any peer reviews.
Yeah, and that's, you know, we're encouraging that. And I think, Joni, you're right. The language here.
It says both.
It doesn't require peer review, right?
Because in a content class, you may feel you don't have enough time to also dedicate to the peer reviews. So, and that's, yeah. So I have them building their paper. It's built by the end of the semester, but they submit to me their parts all along the way.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think
the WAC committee, yeah. If we try and revise our outcomes again, we're going to get kicked out of the college, really. So just imagine there's a such as there, and we'll all wink at one another.
I read it. It says with instructors / peers, so I read it as one or the other.
Well, I was just going to comment and say that going back to something I mentioned earlier, and especially for those of you that are trying to think of your own proposals right now, that our intent is not to be, I think, super nitpicky about these things, and it's really the overall process and looking at this more in kind of a big picture way, I think, as well. So you know, even things like the researching, drafting, I think Ariel, you had a question about what does researching mean. I think that's going to look different depending on the class that you're teaching. Like, for instance, I teach a you know, senior capstone class that students, I mean, they better be doing researching there. They're doing an actual research project and have to write a literature review for that. So that clearly involves researching of peer-reviewed articles, but, you know, other WAC courses or other courses might not involve that. So, you know, I think the researching looks different, but hopefully for whatever writing you're going to be doing, there should be some thought put into that writing ahead of time. I think that's, for me, that's kind of the point of that phrase of research. It's kind of that, as Dan mentioned, kind of that first step along the process of the writing.
That helps to conceptualize it.
Ariel, you and the others who come to this meeting today, you're here because you care about writing, about students writing. So I think overall idea is, I guess the challenge maybe is to find ways to encourage the students to care about writing.
So I'm just oh, sorry, Rich, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I feel like maybe we should be wrapping up soon. So if there are any last questions, maybe we should try to get to those here in the next couple minutes, and then try to wrap up.
So I have a very, very basic question, like just to make sure. So October 31st is the deadline for submitting a WAC proposal on Curriculum, right? So submitting the proposal, and then it gets reviewed and everything. And the proposal is submitting both the syllabus and this form filled. And yeah, that's what it is, right? That's what it's implied. Okay, just to make sure that I'm getting what I have to do right. Yeah.
And Alejandro, I just want to say that the form is not a Word document. It's embedded into the Curriculum system. So
okay,
you won't be seeing this, but the questions and the content and everything is embedded as a form within Curriculum.
So I don't have to fill the form separately. I fill it on Curriculum. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then you upload your syllabus and samples and whatever you want to do.
Right. And yeah, I have a, yeah, I don't have any other major question. I have a very minor one, but if it's not very important, so if anybody else has a burning question, usually use the time.
I was just gonna, I'm just switching the screen here in reference to what Kate just mentioned to kind of show you when you click on, now when you go into your curriculog, there should be a little thing here that you can just say, or maybe it's another spot that just click on new proposal and it'll show up. All of these are the different, I guess here you're seeing all the different core requirements that you could propose for. And so if you, whoops, give me a second, I got to figure out how to get down there. If you hit the next 10, you should see towards the bottom of the core validations, you'll find the writing across curriculum for WAC. And if you click on that, it shows you the process. It literally goes through 7 different steps. So once you propose it, you can actually log back in, you can track exactly where it is. And then to actually propose over here on the right side, because it's very small and might be hard to find, you just click right here on the start proposal. And that should open up. Hopefully y'all are still seeing this, even though it switched screens. That should open up and it gives you all the step-by-step instructions, includes everything that we've just talked about here as well. And it's all fillable. You can attach your syllabus or any other documents, respond to each of the learning outcomes down here. And then once you're ready to submit, there is a submit button there. And then again, as Kate was mentioning earlier, you have to, after you submit, hit the launch button. And then you even, I think after that, need to go over to the right side here and hit the check mark. So just if you're following those step-by-step procedures, it should work well. And like I said, you can always, once you've done that, you can always then, I believe this should even work now. If I just go back into my proposals and look here, it shows up right there. So even though I haven't submitted it, it's right there.
Awesome. And I'll just, people are asking in the chat about the video. This will be available on the YouTube channel, this recording here, so you can share it with folks. And I'll send out a link, but let me just promo the YouTube channel for the core curriculum and it'll be there.
Saul, you were also asking if this something was available for other people in your department. And I think our plan is to do this workshop again. Yes, Matt?
Yeah, so we had talked about that. I forget who had just asked about the deadline. So there, and maybe Kate, you can weigh on this too. The plan is for there to be actually 2 deadlines. The October 31st is the first deadline. Now, by all means, please try to get them in by October 31st. But if you don't, there will be a second deadline. Is it January 30th? Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
And the difference is if you need it to be offered in fall 21, you need to do it by this deadline. If it can be later, you can wait till January.
And so I think our intent
if you're looking,
is to offer another.
Oh, sorry, Matt.
I was just going to say our
intent. And if you're looking for, I hate Zoom. If you're looking for resources other than this workshop, one of the WACs, I think, self-imposed core charges is professional development for our colleagues. So if your department had a particular area that you wanted one or more of us to come into and design a workshop, I don't want to speak for the group, but that would pretty much be a high life moment for me. We love to talk about writing. And for you or for individuals, like if you see the people who have gone through Dan's Writing Fellows program, I've attended their presentations. The work they do is amazing. And then they become just tremendous practitioners for and advocates of writing on campus. I think Matt, at the very least, is a veteran of the Fellows program, and he's now chairing the WAC committee, Joni, right? Like it is, I think it's one of the single best resources we have on campus. And I would also add, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, you are compensated for participating. You're given a 1 credit overload, right?
Yes.
So you get compensated with a credit.
We're learning Matt.
Wait, what'd you say, Richard?
I said Matt has gone through all that, the course that you teach and everything. Now he's chair of the WAC committee. Now we're learning from Matt.
I'd say I'm still learning from all of you, but yeah.
Oh, well, we know that, that's a given.
So I don't know, were there any other questions that we missed either in the chat or otherwise? If not, I wonder if maybe this would be a good chance to end the meeting. I did want to just say in close, first of all, just thank you all so much for joining us with this. I think just reiterating what Dan had said earlier, it's clear that just by you showing up to this meeting, you all care very much about writing in your courses. And I really, at least me personally, I have no doubt that the proposals you submit will most likely be fine. Just want to encourage you in that and encourage you to, reach out to others and your colleagues and encourage them to submit WAC courses. The more, the better. And definitely follow up, let us know. You can email any of us if you do have further questions. And last thing, I couldn't let this meeting go without at least addressing that I noticed the email reminder that went out from the center yesterday that had the typo in it. I just thought that was so ironic that there was a typo right in the WAC workshop advertisement. So just thought that was awesome.
But it did not impede meaning, Matt. So you're good. You won't be downgraded in my class.
Yeah.
But if I ask you to revise, I want to see that effort.
I like the tone that it set, Matt. It gave us a sense of humanism, and we could see how many people were sharp enough to notice it. I mean, there are all kinds of good reasons for a typo.
I was going to say that gets into my area of cognitive psychology, where you can just, read right through typos and not even see them.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
All right. Well,
I just want to add that although this can sometimes feel tedious for the students and the faculty, I've had a number of students thank me for having their writing improved. And this is a content class that I teach. So go for it. It's a good thing.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Did we want to check in on that spreadsheet thing, Matt, before the committee disappeared?
Stop. I'm going to stop the recording, you all, and I've got to get my kid outside. She's crawling up the walls. So I'm going to stop this, but I'll leave the meeting open because it's mine. So yeah, just